Hello guys, welcome to one more Christian pandemic. Today I'm talking English because the person invited to speak is from US. After I talk in English, I will translate to Portuguese, okay? So this person is a very friend of mine. He was my pastor in 2002 in Lakewood Baptist Church, New York. He was a youth pastor during a very important time of my life. And I invited him to speak today because I believe he has some experience of the time that they are living in US, and I hope they can bless us in Brazil. So after I introduce this person, the pastor, I would like to let you know the questions that I made to him. The first question I've done to him is how to maintain the church's identity outside of the temples. How can small churches be connected and continue their mission in the city? Many pastors are worried during this time of what to do, also because there is no meetings, there is no face-to-face meetings with brothers of faith. So the question is how they can act, what they need to do to take care of themselves and also to take care with the others. That's one question. And another question is how should pastors and leaders prepare with the new normal? What the experience that this pastor is having in US as a pastor that can help us in our time here in Brazil, thinking that he's a little bit ahead of us about the pandemic period. They are already doing some flexibilization of the quarantine, so he's a little bit ahead of us, so I hope he has some experiences to share with all of us. Before I introduce, let me translate in Portuguese. Olá pessoal, bem-vindo a mais um Pandemia Cristã. Eu estou falando em inglês hoje porque a pessoa que foi convidada é dos Estados Unidos, é um grande amigo, alguém que foi meu pastor nos Estados Unidos, na Lakewood Baptist Church, Igreja Batista dos Estados Unidos, na cidade de Lakewood, em New York. Ele foi mais especificamente meu pastor de jovens na época e eu convidei ele para participar deste vídeo, deste projeto, porque eu acredito que a experiência dele nos Estados Unidos pode contribuir com a gente aqui no Brasil. E as perguntas que eu fiz para ele foi: como manter a identidade da igreja fora dos templos? A outra pergunta é: como igrejas pequenas podem se conectar e continuar a sua missão na cidade? Outra é que muitos pastores estão preocupados com o fato de não ter reuniões, de não poder estar presencialmente com os irmãos da fé. Como eles podem se cuidar para também cuidar dos outros? Como os pastores e líderes podem se preparar para aquilo que nós estamos chamando de novo normal? E qual é a experiência que ele pode transmitir como pastor e que pode nos ajudar hoje aqui no Brasil? Lembrando que ele está um pouquinho à frente no período lá, a quarentena já deu uma flexibilizada na cidade onde ele está, as reuniões presenciais já voltaram mais flexibilizadas para ele aqui na nossa cidade, por exemplo. Apesar do prefeito ter flexibilizado, muitas igrejas, a maioria delas, ainda continuam sem reunião, e eu diria que o Brasil vive uma certa incerteza que é muito maior do que está acontecendo lá nos Estados Unidos, apesar de que os dois países estão sofrendo muito nesse período por causa do Covid-19. Vou voltar para o inglês. So, the person invited to speak is from the Community Road Church in Fenton and Howell in Michigan, United States. He was, as I said, he was my youth pastor in Lakewood Baptist Church, and he planted that two churches in US where he is now a pastor. And I would like to turn and to give it to you, Pastor Chris, to talk about not just these questions, but the experience. I believe it will bless a lot each one of us that is watching this video. Então, a pessoa que foi convidada para falar hoje é o pastor Vitarelli. Ele é pastor da The Road Community Church em Fenton e Howell, em Michigan, nos Estados Unidos. Ele foi meu pastor de jovens na Lakewood Baptist Church, Igreja Batista. E ele vai falar um pouco sobre a sua experiência nesse tempo e também respondendo as questões que nós conseguimos entregar a ele. E ele vai falar agora. Então, pastor Chris, eu vou deixar a palavra com você.
Hi, I'm Chris Vitarelli. I'm the pastor of the Road Community Church in Fenton and Howell, Michigan, in the United States. And I have the privilege of just sharing with you some of my thoughts regarding the coronavirus, COVID-19, and just the response to it that we have as churches, how we keep our people connected, and I feel really privileged to be able to share some things with you. So one of the first question that I was asked was about how do we maintain the identity of the church outside of being in a building? How do people feel connected and feel like they're a part of something larger than themselves? And one of the things that we did throughout the time we were quarantined, because I'm recording this video after some of the restrictions have been lifted and we've been able to meet again as a body of believers. But before we were able to do that, we were stressing the church as a people. And I know it's very easy to slip into the mentality of the church as a place or the church as a gathering, but we spent a lot of time during the quarantine stressing the church as a people, as a group, as an affiliation, and more importantly, as the body of Christ. In 1 Corinthians chapter 12 has extensive discussion on that. So just stressing the body aspect. This is a great time too, and it was a good time for us to stress the local gathering of believers versus the global community of believers. And for some people, they'd never really thought about the church being so broad and so varied across the world. I mean, all churches, it seemed like, have been online streaming their services in a way like they never have before. And so stressing the local versus the global, this is a great time to introduce the people of a church to the global church, the universal church. We did the Lord's Supper, communion, across the streaming, which, and I don't know if you've done that. If you have, great. If not, it was a meaningful time for us to do that, knowing that everyone that was watching was doing it at the same time. And so we just gave people warning ahead of time and had elements ready, and then led them through that through the streaming service. And that was really important too. We also made sure that our people, I strongly encourage them, in order to keep that connection, I strongly encourage them to have some kind of connection with someone from the church at least a couple times a week. So for some people, it was just Zoom, watching the service on Facebook, or it was just a Bible study. Others took advantage of all the different technologies, and so they were doing a Zoom Bible study. They were watching the live stream. They were calling a friend. They were on Facebook messaging people and interacting that way. They were doing video calls with family. But whatever you can do to encourage as much interaction as possible, I recommended to our people at least twice a week, above and beyond just watching the live stream of our service, so that they didn't feel disconnected from the people of the church, so that they were reminded, that they were part of something larger, and just maintain that sense of connectedness and family. Another big question is not just how do we stay connected and to retain our identity as a church outside of our building, but how do we maintain the mission, to stay connected to the larger mission in our city, to bring the gospel. How do we stay connected that way? Well, I know for our church, this was a challenge, but one thing we did at the very beginning of the quarantine is we called our schools and we said, are there families that are going to be hurting during this time because they don't have the meals that they normally have from the schools? Because a lot of kids get their breakfast and their lunch from the school. And the school said, you know what, we would love the help. Here's what you can do. And so we began doing that, and people would show up. They'd have masks and gloves, and they'd show up to our church building, and we'd only have one or two people there serving. But what they would do is they'd pull up, they'd honk, and we'd bring out lunches to them, and we served people that way. But I think, given whatever scenario might be in, that might not always be possible. It may not be, and schools are out now. At least here they are. And so one thing that we did is started thinking in terms of online strategies. Where are the people in our community hanging out online? Are they on Twitter? Are they on Facebook? Are they on Snapchat or Instagram? Like, where are people really hanging out online, and where are they going to see things that we post? And so we tried to focus our attention on those things and post encouraging messages, scripture. One of the most powerful things that happened for us was we have a prayer ministry, and our assistant pastor, he would go online and he would stream live, and he would just ask people, what can I pray for? And so many people made prayer requests through that. My own wife, she began calling through her Facebook friend list and just called person after person, like right down the line. This is something she felt like God was telling her to do. And so she called people and said, hey, what can I pray for you about? How can I lift you up before the Father? And people would text her back or message her back with extensive prayer requests, and she would pray for those. So that was a way that she was able to reach out. Another thing that would be easy for a church, especially a small church, to do during a time of quarantine is, you may not be able to gather at the building, but to simply say, what's an act of kindness you can do for a neighbor? And those things might take some time to think of. Some of them are simple. I know around here, it might be going out and bringing the trash bins from the curb back to that person's house so they don't have to go outside and drag them back. It could be, we're into nice weather here, so it might be mowing their grass, cutting their grass for them. But that's something that people in the church could be encouraged to do, to wherever they are, wherever they're located, to look around and say, what's something I can do for a neighbor that expresses the love of Jesus? So that's one thing that we encourage people to do, to just look around at the people of our community and say, where do they need prayer? What are their physical needs? I think one of the most important lessons that I learned from all of this was the importance of taking care of myself. And not in a selfish way by any means, but taking care of myself so that I was able to care for others. And just to give you a little bit of my story, our church is small. We have two campuses. One has about 50 people. The other has about 40. So we're not a big church, but that's still a lot of people to care for when you don't see them every week. So we divided our lists, our members, into groups, and assigned several to each of our elders for them to check in on those people throughout the quarantine. And then I made the decision that I would not work all the time just because I was home and my computer was there and I could. I made the decision that I was going to take my nights and devote those to my family. Realizing that I have other people who can take care of things, I realized that I could get up early, I could work for, however many hours, but I could finish in the middle of the afternoon and have the rest of the night to be with my family. And that was a rule that I stuck to. I continued to take my day off. I have a 1 day off a week that I take on Mondays, and I continued to do that. And as I stuck to that schedule, and I didn't push myself harder than was necessary, I found that I was able to get into a rhythm, and I had energy for people. At a couple points during the quarantine, I just sent a quick email out to the people who were doing the Zoom Bible study that I was leading and just said, I'm sorry, we'll not be having the Bible study tonight. I need some time to rest. And that was hard to do as a pastor because I wanted to teach and I wanted the people to feel like I cared about them and I wanted them to hear the lesson that I had prepared. But I also knew that it was more important that I be rested and fresh and energized so that I could continue preparing the sermon for the coming Sunday and continue to make those phone calls and keep in touch with the people who needed care. So it was really important to set those priorities early on. First couple weeks I didn't, and I was very frustrated. I was very tired. I was just out of sorts. I could not find a rhythm for my days. And once I made that decision to take care of myself, things fell into place, and the rest of the quarantine went much more smoothly. I think it's important that you establish a day off. It's important that you establish some work hours so that you're not, if you do 40 to 50 hours of work through the week, for example, and I don't know what it is for you, it could be more or less. I know some pastor friends of mine, they said their work week went from maybe 40 to 50 hours a week. It jumped to over 60, especially in the first weeks of the quarantine. And what I found is throughout the quarantine, my work hours slowly went down. So where I was maybe up to around 50 hours before, by the end of quarantine, I was probably doing more in the high 30s in the terms of the number of hours. And that's because there were fewer things that I had to do each week that were administrative, but I also was taking it seriously that I needed a rest too. And don't underestimate the amount of stress that you're experiencing. That can make a 40-hour week feel like a 50-hour week because you're experiencing so much more stress and anxiety about ministering to a community that's scattered, and that takes its toll. It's a heavy burden to bear. And if you're like me, you probably spend a lot of your days walking through your house saying, well, I've finished the sermon, I've prepared the Bible study, I've already called a whole list of people today that need care. I don't know what else to do. What else can I do? This is what I would recommend, Pastor, is I would say, please just use that time. Go take a nap. Rest. Go spend time with your family. Spend time with your wife. Go play a game with your kids. Because you know before God that you've done what He's asked of you. And it's okay to take a rest. Now, obviously, you could take advantage of this time and just really do nothing at all. And I know that if you're watching this, that's not who you are. So I would say just use that time to rest, but don't let that stress and anxiety build up. You've got to take care of yourself. There's a rhythm that you can find through this quarantine that can really help you. The rhythm of sermon preparation and Bible study preparation and caring for your flock. And once you find that, you'll find that things are settling down for you. Now, another question that I was asked is, what about this whole idea of a new normal? When this all is done, when the quarantine is over, what is the new normal? And that is going to be different. The answer to that is different depending on your context, what kind of church you're in, what city you're in, what country you're in. How that will look is going to vary. But there are some constants, some principles, I think, that will govern what happens next. First of all, I think there is not going to be a normal, okay? That's why we're saying new normal. And I think part of this new normal needs to be this, that change is the new norm. Change is the new norm. So as you move forward out of quarantine and people start coming back to the physical building, let me caution you, don't attempt to restart everything that you were doing before the quarantine. Don't do that. Start right out of the gate, right at the beginning, telling people, hey, everything's different, and we're the slate has been wiped clean. So we're gonna keep it that way for a while. Let's keep it that way for a while, and let's just pray and let's just seek God for where he would want this church to go. And when you do that, when you set the tone right in the beginning, or even before you meet that first time back, you're already letting people know that, hey, it's not the way it was before. See, a lot of times churches get entrenched in ministries. We keep things in ministry longer than we should. Maybe that ministry we started 10 years ago has peaked and then it started to decline, but we keep it because it's just what we do. And we get comfortable doing the same thing over and over, even though it's not yielding good results. Pastor, this is the perfect time to just across the board say, we're stopping everything. Everything. And we're going to take some time to evaluate and just pray and seek God. And so what that'll do for your people is they're already ready. They want to get together, but they're ready to experience some change. They've been through change over the last several months, so they're going to be okay with that. When you say, let's just take a break, they're already okay with that because they've been taking a break for the last few months. They haven't been doing their normal ministries. And then what will happen is you have a group of people that are ready, they're open to new suggestions. They might be more willing to flex as you suggest new things. Maybe there are ministries that you have always wanted to start. Now is the time to promote those. Maybe there's ministries you've always wanted to end. Now's the time to end those. And it sounds kind of funny, but you can always just say to your congregation, that ministry was a victim of COVID-19. It succumbed to this time period, and it's never coming back. And that gives your people an opportunity to start thinking in fresh ways. For example, in our church, we've been talking about the possibility of having a third campus. We have our Fenton campus, we have a Howell campus, 2 different cities, they're about 20 minutes apart. Well, what about an online campus? What could we do there? Could we do an online campus? And people are comfortable thinking about that. Maybe there's things you've always been doing, but it's time to find a new way forward. For example, I was leading a small group for years. I planted the church that I'm serving in. And so 10 years ago, we started a small group in our home. And after 10 years, guess who's still hosting that group and leading that group? Me. And what I found is that I am actually in the way of other leaders and people in the church who would like to host their own small groups. And so after quarantine, I've been telling people, my group will not be rejoining. We will not be getting back together. Now is your opportunity. Do you want to host? Do you want to lead? Because I am stepping aside. And everyone has been okay with it. They're disappointed because it was they enjoyed the group. But what a great time to keep moving forward with small groups, but just in a new way. And so the new normal, I would say change must be the new normal. Find a new way to go forward and let people know there's no going back. Just like we can't rewind the tape and go back to life before COVID-19, we can't do that in our churches. It is time to move forward. And it's going to be a time of change and transition. The last thing that I want to talk about is the fact that during a time of quarantine, a time of change, it's very easy to struggle with our identity. Because so many pastors and so many leaders identify themselves strictly by their occupation. When someone says, tell me about yourself, what do we always lead off with? I'm a pastor. It's so closely tied to who we are, to our identity, that when we don't have a congregation that we're preaching to, when we're preaching to an empty room or on a video, it doesn't fulfill that need in us. Maybe we don't feel wanted right now or needed. We don't feel used of God. We don't feel affirmed in our ministry. We don't feel encouraged in what we're doing. It feels flat to us and lifeless. And so I know that I've talked to other pastors who have gone through a period of deep discouragement during quarantine because of that. And what I want to encourage you to do, if you're watching this, I want you to know your identity has not changed. You are still a son or daughter of a king. You're not defined by your role or your ability to preach. You are defined by your relationship to Jesus Christ. And so during this time of quarantine, this time where things are a little mixed up, they're a little different, this is a time to rediscover your identity in Christ. Because that's really what gets us tripped up in ministry anyway, is we start to identify ourselves not only by our role as pastor, but by how many people are in our church, how many leaders we've got, how big our budget is. Are we growing? Are we shrinking? Are we plateauing as a church? And we have all these measurements and systems by which we want to give ourselves worth and identity. And what I hope you'll do during this time is take those moments I said to set aside for yourself, to just say, I'm done working for the day. Take that time to actually sit down with the Lord and talk to Him and ask Him to renew your sense of identity in Him, to restore your connection with Him, to see yourself through His eyes and not the world's eyes. And I think that will help, because I know for me, I spent about 3 months preaching to empty rooms. I'd go to our church building. I had one guy in the back who was running the camera, and I would preach. I'd preach my heart out, but there was nobody there. A few times I had one of my kids there, or my wife, or I'd preach to the guy running our audio equipment, but it's just not the same. And I wrestled with that. There are people that come to me every Sunday and say, Pastor, thank you for that sermon. That was so meaningful. I can tell you really studied for that. Thank you for doing your job as a servant of God. And of course, as a pastor and as a person, I go, oh, that feels good to get that affirmation. But for 3 months, I didn't hear that. Didn't have that. And so I understand that struggle to find that sense of identity right now, to say, well, who am I if I don't have my church? Who am I if I don't have a group of people to preach to? And I will just reaffirm, you are a child of God. You are a son or a daughter of a king. And He sees your work. He sees what you are doing. He is applauding you. He is cheering you on. He is spurring you forward. He is encouraging you. And He is pleased with you. So don't be discouraged. Don't feel out of sorts. Know that God is with you, and He sees the work that you're doing. He knows your heart. So those are just a few thoughts that I had about COVID-19. I hope that those are helpful to you in some way. Thanks for watching.
What's the new normal? As he said, new normal is the change. So that's the time to change. That's the time to update. That's the time to be ready for the mission. That's a lot of challenge for us, and we need to be prepared for that. I would like to thank Pastor Chris for the time, for the dedication to prepare this video, to be with us, to share your experience. I hope that this will help a lot of pastors, leaders, and members of Christians community in Brazil and all over the world. So thanks a lot for that. O que é a mudança? O que é o novo normal? O novo normal é a mudança. Essa é a hora de mudar. Muitos desafios estão à nossa frente e nós precisamos realmente estar preparados para isso. Acho que temos uma missão muito grande pela frente para continuar levando o Evangelho do Senhor Jesus. Pastor Cris, eu gostaria de agradecer pelo seu tempo dedicado a esse vídeo, seu tempo para gravar esse vídeo, para nos ajudar e nos abençoar com a sua experiência, com aquilo que você tem passado também aí nos Estados Unidos. Pastor Chris, God bless you. Thanks a lot for your help. I wish that God uses you at this time in US, and you can count on us with our prayers. We will be with you. Thanks a lot. Pastor Chris, muito obrigado pela sua ajuda, por dedicar tempo a responder essas questões desse vídeo. Nós estaremos orando por você. Conte conosco e estamos juntos. See you later. Até mais. Thank you. God bless you all. Até mais. Muito obrigado. Deus os abençoe.